I don't want to focus on the abuse of the system, whether it's free cell phones or whether it's food stamps, whatever it is. I want to justly and kindly discuss the care of the poor. I mentioned in the beginning of the program the benevolent empire. This was a name that was given to a movement of Christians in America in the 19th century that involved the wealthy and the upper middle class showing kindness to the poor, helping to extend the kindness of Christ to the unfortunate, to the needy, okay? It involves social activities, as they are called in some circles. And it was done with gusto by many people. And it was done as a fulfillment of Christian duty, all right? Matthew 25. It was Grover Cleveland who vetoed a bill to send wheat to farmers who had had a massive crop failure to try and rescue them. And Cleveland said, I do not have the authority to take other people's money and to give it to those farmers. Go and raise the money, he said. And they did. And if my memory is correct, that they got like 10 times the amount that they were even asking for from Congress. Now, I bring that up about Grover Cleveland because there were other fights along the way where people tried to use the federal treasury to help the poor, the needy, those who had a natural disaster or whatever. And the people that were in government at the time, some of them said, yeah, let's do it. And others said, no, we don't have the authority to do it. But they said, let's help them as neighbors. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So the benevolent empire sought to do this, to help people. And it was good, and it was just, and it was Christian. Okay? The issue is, does the government have the right to compel us to do it? Or is that a violation of the four governments? Now, for those of you who are students of the Old Testament, you will know that there are a lot of things in the Old and the New Testament for that matter, a lot of outlines, if you will, or a lot of steps that the Lord put in place to care for the poor. What is the number one firewall against poverty and hunger? The number one firewall? Labor, work. Paul said, if a man will not work, let him not eat. There's a proverb that says, the hunger of the laborer drives him on. God said, you're going to make your bread by the sweat of your brow. Okay? There's a direct connection between labor and food. The laborer himself working so that he can get food. That's step number one. And if somebody is able-bodied and they just won't work, well, then there's a problem. All right, so that's number one. Number two, what's the next? Family. Family. A man who does not provide for his own is worse than an infidel. Okay? It is the duty of parents to take care of their children. The duty of extended family. Then we talk about extended family. And what constitutes a true widow? Paul said, let true widows be taken into the care of the church. Oh, the care of the church. Paul didn't say, let true widows be taken care of by the Roman Empire or by Caesar. It was let them come into the church. But they had to be a true widow. They had to be alone in the world. No children that could take care of them. Because Jesus said that it was the duty, in effect, what he said was the duty of adult children to care for their elderly parents. All right? That's a part of how God takes care of the poor. Another way in the Old Testament, we see that from time to time the Levites would gather foodstuffs and then those would be distributed to the poor. We see that the Lord talked about leaving the gleanings. They were to leave the edges of a field so that the poor of the land could come in and could gather it. We even see that God said somebody can go into a field of standing grain, okay, and can take some of the grain and rub it in their fingers and eat it. That's what Jesus and his apostles were doing. They were going through a field. Remember that time in the Pharisees were saying, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath? And when I first started reading the Bible, I thought, well, who cares that they're doing it on the Sabbath? They're stealing this man's grain. They're going in and taking grain and eating it. But it was a part of Levitical law, biblical law, that the hungry could go into a field and eat what was there. They couldn't take any away. This wasn't the gleanings, but they could take some and eat it. But notice that all of these things, these exquisite ways that people help one another, and God's saying you cannot keep a man's cloak overnight if he left it to you as a pledge, because how's he going to stay warm in the night? So much care for the poor. Be careful how you treat the poor, the widow, the orphan among you. If you mistreat them and they cry out to me, God said, I'll make your wife a widow, I'll make your children orphans. It's really critical. But what's the one thing that's absent in all of these things that I gave you? One thing that's absent. I'll tell you when I come back. I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years. And sadly, we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and download your own copy. Why does a nice guy like me keep getting thrown in jail? I have been arrested almost 50 times and spent over a year of my life locked up in various prison facilities. And I wrote a book, many books. In fact, one of them is called, Why Does a Nice Guy Like Me Keep Getting Thrown in Jail? It's a theological work, answering those who say that the church should not be involved in politics or that we should retreat. I encourage you to get it. In fact, get one and give it to your pastor.